Hi, Jasmine Polly from Wellness Vision with you again. And so today we're going to dive into day 11. And I know that I promised some really great information yesterday. So that's what I plan to deliver because today is about a really important part of detoxification, and that is liver function. Now, with the amount of toxins around, the changes in hormones, medications, all of these things, they all impact liver function and can make a massive difference on our level of health and our ability to detoxify the things in our environment. Okay, so jumping right in, let's have a chat about it. So, liver detoxification, there's actually three phases to liver detoxification, and some intermediate phases there. So, if we look at phase one, which is the one we're going to speak about today, phase one is where we actually prime toxins that need to be eliminated to get them out of the body. So, say if a toxin comes into the liver like this, and it needs to actually be in a better form so the rest of the phases in the liver can actually work correctly. So, what that means is that our body actually needs to make kind of like a prime it or make like a handhold for the next enzymes in the system to work effectively. Now, by doing this, it makes this initial toxin more damaging to the body. So, this toxin now can act like a free radical in the liver and cause tissue damage. So that is why there is an intermediate phase, which I'm also going to discuss a little bit more. And that's where we need to actually be protecting ourselves from these primed toxins. Okay, now, so that's where I'm going to talk about, and I'll come back to it, but I just want to give you an idea of what happens then. So, after this toxin's primed and it's ready to be detoxified, it enters into phase two of the liver detoxification, and that's where the body is actually binding an amino acid to it, an enzyme, amino acid, to actually make it more water soluble so it can be eliminated from the body in the bile, which is also produced by the liver. And that's what brings us to the phase three, which is how the liver excretes it into the digestive system and eliminates that toxin from the body altogether. So you can see the liver has quite a few other functions. It's also it's also needed for blood sugar regulation, and I'll talk about that in when I talk about phase three as well, because all very important. Now, I know it does sound a little bit technical, but I believe in the power of education. If you know why this stuff's important and you kind of got an understanding of why, then I think it's going to make you appreciate it a lot more. And instead of me just, I'm sure you've heard other people bang on about the importance of liver detoxification, but usually they're just trying to sell you a supplement. I'm not trying to sell you a supplement, I'm just talking to you about what you can actually do. So let's jump back to phase one, which is what I wanted to discuss today. So that's where we're actually going to be getting that toxin, that hormone, whatever it is, and we're actually getting it primed. So we're actually making it more able to do damage. Okay, so certain things enter. If we talk about hormones, for instance, they need to go into phase two. Most medications need to go into phase two, but there's some things that can actually be detoxified quite effectively just by phase one, and that's your caffeine and your alcohol. So if we think about phase one and phase two about being like a little bit of a scale, if we've got a nice amount of phase one, equal amount, making these damaging toxins, we've got some antioxidants in this middle phase to protect things. But then when it enters into phase two, and we've got our phase two is working effectively, we should have no collateral damage. You know, they shouldn't be hanging around for very long because we've got equal amounts. It's in one way, out the other. Now, what often I find, especially when I do liver function tests, which is not the same one you'd get done through your doctor, this is actually measuring how well your liver detoxifies through these pathways, that often people have higher levels of phase one. So what that can mean is you're actually producing more of these damaging intermediate substances that need to go into the phase two, but maybe your phase two is suffering. So you end up with these toxins sticking around in the liver and doing more potential damage because there's either not enough antioxidants there, or the phase two isn't able to keep up. It might upregulate for some of the pathways for a little bit, but it definitely means that there's going to be some lapse in function there. So one thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that that phase one isn't too high, and then we need to also support our phase two. So if we're looking at from a case of alcohol and caffeine, if we're somebody that's already in that high phase one and we're already struggling to detoxify our liver, then caffeine and alcohol is not going to be doing you too much good, and you definitely don't want to have much of it. Now, I'm not saying that you have to have zero, because actually some of the studies are showing that a little bit can actually be better for people than none at all. Now, I know that's a bit exciting, but they did a study that showed that mild red wine drinkers, or like, say the glass at dinner type red wine drinkers, actually lived longer than those that drank no alcohol at all. Now, this may be due to the effect that alcohol has on it calming. It actually stimulates a neurotransmitter called GABA, which is relaxing to the body. So a lot of, like your Valium will stimulate GABA as well, but alcohol is a natural GABA agonist or stimulator. So that's probably why, because it's helping people chill out a little bit more. Now, when it comes to caffeine, there's some genetic variations where people don't deal as well with caffeine, but in general, unless people are highly anxious, then a little bit of caffeine has been found to be associated with beneficial properties, such as helping with their memory, their concentration, their reaction speed, at low dosages. Now, once you're actually getting to your 3-4 plus cups a day, then you're probably going to find that you're overstimulating and you're jumping from one task to the next and not really finishing things, and causing yourself to be, anxious or stressed or whatever it is. So once again, it's finding the right balance for you. And say somebody, when I'm saying 3 to 4 cups, some people have that and don't skip a beat. Now, I'm not saying that that's ideal for them. It's still likely that it could be causing issue at that kind of level, but there's definitely genetic variations, whereas somebody just having a cup of tea, or even green tea with very limited amounts of caffeine in there, will be enough to actually send them into anxiety. So you've really got to listen to your body here. Don't, just because they say that 1 or 2 cups a day, or I read a study that I think, more than 4 cups a day could help prevent diabetes. I'm like, well, it depends on what you're doing. If you're having that, a black coffee instead of, your sugary chocolate bar, then probably. But there's a lot of other factors in there, and you really need to listen to yourself. So I'm definitely not anti-alcohol. I'm not anti-caffeine. I'm in moderation, because it's all about balance, like I said yesterday. So when we actually get back to liver function, what I would suggest, and what I want you to think about today, is where you think you fit. Now, if you're doing the detox, and you cut out, I know that I said that caffeine was optional if you're wanting to cut it fully out, or if you're going to keep a little bit in there to avoid some headaches. But a lot of you may have cut out the alcohol, and I think that'd be a great thing, just to give your body a little bit of a rest over that time, at least to have decreased the amount, so your body is getting some sort of reprieve is a good idea. But have a think about, once this detox is over, what's going to be a good level for you to maintain yourself, so you can still live life, still have fun. I'm not about taking away all of the things that are fun in life, but when it comes to wellness and absence of chronic disease, it's the people with the good habits and the people that consistently stick by their own personal rules that have the better level of health. So, like I said, personal rules. That's not my rule for you. It's your own rule. So have a think about what amount of alcohol do you think is okay for you? And, in realistic terms, because I don't think anybody does well with a carton a day. So, like, try to keep that as on the lower end, if you are somebody that struggles with alcohol, and the same with caffeine, because a lot of people think that because they're sleeping at night, or they're falling to sleep well at night, that they don't have a problem with the caffeine. However, caffeine does have a half-life which can be different in people, but they say about an average of 6 hours. So if you're drinking caffeine later in the night, then you're going to have more of that caffeine in your system. And some people, that doesn't stop them falling asleep, but it makes them wake up more, so they get a lot more micro wakings and they don't get into that deep restorative sleep. So have a good think about it, the caffeine and the alcohol aspect. One other last thing that I want to touch on, I know that this is a longer video than usual, but is your antioxidant status. And that brings us back to all of these colorful, rich, fresh fruits and vegetables, because they're going to be where you're going to get majority of your antioxidants. Nuts and seeds, you're looking at as well, but you're looking at good quality, fresh produce. So I hope that that's been useful for you, and I will be back tomorrow to speak about phase 2. Bye.